Welcome to the BL Story Room. Before we dive into the shadows of this story, take a second. Scroll down to the comments and tell me, where in the world are you watching from right now? It connects us. And if you're ready for a story that's going to break your heart before putting it back together, hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what comes next. Now take a deep breath. Let's step into the rain. Chapter 1. The rain in Seattle didn't wash things clean. It just made the grime slicker. Inside St. Jude's private wing, the air was too cold. It smelled of expensive lilies and fear. Han Jiwon hated the VIP floor. He adjusted his scrubs, the fabric thin and worn at the elbows, and kept his head down. That was the rule. Keep your head down, do your shift, go home to the empty apartment that smelled like mildew. He's still screaming, Nurse Betty whispered near the station, clutching her coffee mug like a shield. For 3 hours, Jiwon. The poor thing. Jiwon paused, his hand hovering over a chart. The pediatric specialists? They got kicked out, she hissed, leaning in. The father, he's terrifying. One of the doctors tried to take the baby for a checkup and the guards nearly broke his arm. They say it's Kang Tae-hyun. The name dropped like a stone in deep water. Jiwon felt a chill prickle the back of his neck. Even in the Korean-American community, you didn't speak that name loudly. The Kang syndicate ran the docks, the imports, the things the police didn't want to see. And then he heard it. It wasn't just a cry. It was a raw, jagged sound tearing through the heavy oak doors at the end of the hall. A newborn, sounding like it was dying of heartbreak. Jiwon's chest tightened. It was a physical ache, a pull in his gut that he hadn't felt in a long time. Not since before. He tried to ignore it. He tried to focus on his rounds. But the cry pitched higher, turning into a choke. Someone has to go in there, Jiwon said, his voice quiet. I'm not going, Betty said, eyes wide. That alpha inside? His pheromones alone nearly made me pass out. It's pure aggression. He's suffocating the room. The baby choked again. Silence followed. A terrifying silence. Jiwon didn't think. He didn't check his pay grade. He just moved. His sneakers squeaked against the polished floor, a ridiculous sound in the tense hallway. 2 men in black suits stood outside Suite 404. They were massive, like walls of muscle. One stepped forward, hand moving inside his jacket. Step back, the guard growled. The baby stopped crying, Jiwon said. He didn't look at the gun. He looked at the door. If he's not breathing, your boss won't care who you stopped at the door. He'll just blame you. The guard hesitated. The silence inside was deafening. Jiwon pushed past him and shoved the door open. The room was dark. The blinds were drawn against the city lights. The air was thick, heavy, suffocating. It smelled of ozone, burnt wood, and grief so potent it tasted like copper on the tongue. Dominant alpha pheromones. Uncontrolled. Dangerous. In the corner, a figure stood by the bassinet. Kang Tae-hyun looked like he had been carved out of night. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dress shirt that was wrinkled and unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with tension. But his face, he looked shattered. He was staring down at the small bundle, his hands hovering, afraid to touch, afraid to break. The baby, a tiny thing, was turning purple, face scrunched, mouth open in a silent scream. Get out, Tae-hyun said. His voice was low, a rumble of thunder that vibrated in Jiwon's ribs. I said no more doctors. I'm not a doctor, Jiwon said. His heart was hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird, but his feet kept moving. And you're suffocating him. Tae-hyun's head snapped up. His eyes were dark, almost black, rimmed with red. What did you say to me? Your pheromones, Jiwon whispered, stepping into the circle of tension. The pressure was immense. It made his knees weak. You're distressed. You're flooding the room. The baby, he can feel your panic. He's terrified. Tae-hyun froze. He looked at his hands, then at the child. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He took a staggering step back, hitting the wall. I can't stop it, the alpha rasped. He sounded destroyed. She's gone. He's all that's left. And I'm killing him. Jiwon didn't look at the powerful mob boss. He looked at the baby. He reached into the bassinet. Shoo, little one. It's okay. Jiwon's hands were gentle, practiced. He scooped the infant up. The baby was hot, sweaty, trembling. Jaiwan brought the child to his chest, right over his heart. He instinctively released his own scent, a soft, faint aroma. Vanilla and rain. It wasn't strong. Jaiwan was a defective omega, his scent usually muted. But right now, it poured out of him, fueled by instinct. "It's okay," he hummed, swaying slightly. "You're safe. I've got you." The change was instant. The baby gasped, inhaling the soft scent. The purple flush faded. The silent screaming stopped, replaced by soft, hiccuping whimpers. The tiny fist unclenched and grabbed the fabric of Jaiwan's scrub top. The room went still. Jaiwan closed his eyes, resting his chin on the top of the baby's head. He felt the tiny heartbeat slow down against his own. For a second, just a second, the emptiness in Jaiwan's own life felt filled. He didn't realize he was being watched. Taehyun was staring at him. The alpha's aggression had receded, pulled back like a tide, leaving only raw shock. He watched the way this stranger, this slender, pale man with dark circles under his eyes, held his son. He saw the way his son, who had rejected every nurse and doctor for 24 hours, melted into the stranger's arms. Taehyun pushed off the wall. He moved silently, a predator's grace. Jaiwan flinched when he realized how close the man was. He turned, clutching the baby tighter. Taehyun didn't attack. He stood a foot away, looming over Jaiwan. He smelled the vanilla and rain. It cut through the burnt wood smell of his own grief. It was quiet. "He likes you," Taehyun said. His voice wasn't a growl anymore. It was rough, exhausted. "He was just scared," Jaiwan murmured, looking down. He couldn't meet the alpha's eyes. It was too intense. "He needs to feed. Someone needs to get a bottle." "He won't eat," Taehyun said. "We tried. He will now. He's calm." Jaiwan moved to the side table, grabbing a prepared bottle. He sat on the edge of the plush chair, ignoring the fact that the most dangerous man in the city was watching his every breath. He tipped the bottle. The baby latched instantly, drinking greedily. The sound of the baby swallowing was the only noise in the room. Taehyun watched the curve of Jaiwan's neck as he looked down at the child. He watched the gentle way Jaiwan's thumb stroked the baby's cheek. "What is your name?" Taehyun asked. "Han Jaiwan." "Jaiwan." Taehyun tested the name on his tongue. It sounded like a claim. Taehyun reached into his pocket. He pulled out a phone, typed a message and put it away. Then he looked at Jaiwan, his gaze heavy, dark, and terrifyingly focused. "My son needs to go home tomorrow," Taehyun said. "The doctors won't discharge him if he's not stable," Jaiwan replied softly. "I'm not asking the doctors," Taehyun said. He took a step closer. The heat radiating off him was intense. "And he's not going alone." Jaiwan looked up, confused. "Excuse me?" Taehyun said. "You're coming with us." I have a job here. I have a shift." "Not anymore." Taehyun's eyes dropped to Jaiwan's lips, then back to his eyes. "Name your price. Double it." "I don't care. You're the only thing that stops him from crying." "I can't just leave," Jaiwan stammered, panic rising. People like Kong Taehyun didn't ask. They took. "Look at him," Taehyun said, pointing to the sleeping baby in Jaiwan's arms. "Can you walk away? Can you leave him here, knowing I can't comfort him? Knowing he'll scream until his throat bleeds?" Jaiwan looked down. The baby was asleep, hands still gripping Jaiwan's shirt. The weight of the child felt right. It felt like purpose. Jaiwan's voice failed. "Come with me," Taehyun said. It was a command, but there was a crack in it. A plea. "I can protect you from anything out there, Han Jaiwan. But I can't save him from this. Only you can." The rain battered against the window. Jaiwan looked at the dangerous man and the fragile life between them. He knew, instinctively, that saying yes was a mistake. It was walking into the fire. "Okay," Jaiwan whispered. Taehyun exhaled, a sound like a collapsing building. "Good." The contract was signed in the air between them. Not with ink, but with the quiet breathing of a child who had finally found peace. Chapter 2. The car was silent. Not the kind of silence you find in a library, but the kind inside a bomb moments before detonation. Jaiwan sat in the back of the sleek, black SUV. The leather seats were softer than his bed at home. Beside him, in a secure car seat that cost more than Jaiwan's annual rent, the baby slept soundly. In the seat opposite them, facing backward, sat Kang Taehyun. He hadn't looked away from Jaiwan once. Not for the entire 20-minute drive out of the city and into the hills where the rich and the dangerous lived. He had a tablet in his hand, scrolling through something with terrifying speed, but every few seconds his dark eyes would flick up. Assessing. Calculating. Jaiwan felt like a specimen under a microscope. He pulled his thin cardigan tighter around himself. He had packed his meager belongings in 2 plastic bags that were now in the trunk. It was humiliating. Is he warm enough? Taehyun's voice broke the silence. It was low, raspy. Jaiwan jumped slightly. The car temperature is fine. He's okay. Taehyun nodded, his gaze lingering on Jaiwan's hands, which were twisting nervously in his lap. You're shaking. I'm fine, Jaiwan lied. You're scared, Taehyun corrected. He set the tablet down. You know who I am. Jaiwan swallowed hard. Everyone knows who you are, Mr. Kang. But then we don't need to waste time on pretenses. Taehyun leaned forward. The space between them shrank. Jaiwan could smell him again, that burnt wood and ozone scent. It was addictive and terrifying. You are here for one reason, Sia. Sia. The baby had a name. My son has no mother, Taehyun said, his voice devoid of emotion, though his jaw tightened. And my enemies know he exists. That makes him a target. It makes you a target now, simply by being near him. Jaiwan's breath hitched. I didn't sign up for danger. You signed up when you walked into that room, Taehyun said coldly. But don't worry. Nothing touches what is mine. And for the duration of this contract, you are mine. The words hung in the air. You are mine. Jaiwan felt heat rush to his cheeks. He knew Taehyun meant it in a possessive, employer way. An asset to be guarded. But the way his deep voice wrapped around the word made Jaiwan's stomach flip. The car slowed, turning through massive iron gates. They swung open silently. The estate was a fortress. High walls topped with cameras. Men patrolling the grounds with dogs. The house itself was a sprawling modern mansion of glass and black stone, beautiful but cold. It didn't look like a home. It looked like a bunker designed by an architect. The car stopped. The door was opened instantly by a guard. Welcome home, sir, the guard said, bowing low. Taehyun stepped out, buttoning his suit jacket. He looked like a king returning to his castle, weary, but absolute. He gestured for Jaiwan to follow. Jaiwan unbuckled Sia carefully. The baby stirred, making a small noise, but settled as soon as Jaiwan held him. Jaiwan stepped out into the cool night air. This way, Taehyun commanded. He led them through the massive front doors. The foyer was cavernous. Marble floors, abstract art that looked like slashed canvas, and silence. No photos. No warmth. A woman in a sharp gray suit was waiting. She looked efficient and severe. Director Kang, she greeted Taehyun, then turned her sharp eyes to Jaiwan. This is the nurse? This is Jaiwan, Taehyun corrected, his tone warning. He stays in the East Wing. Sia. Set up the adjoining room. The woman's eyebrows shot up. The adjoining room? Sir, that connects directly to your suite. I want to hear my son if he cries, Taehyun said, walking past her. Do it. Jaiwan hurried to keep up with Taehyun's long strides. Mr. Kang, I can stay in the guest quarters. I don't need to be right next to. Taehyun stopped abruptly. Jaiwan nearly walked into his broad back. Taehyun turned. He was close. Too close. He looked down at Jaiwan, his eyes tracing the line of Jaiwan's jaw, the pulse fluttering in his neck. Sia needs you, Taehyun said softly. And I need to know you're safe. The East Wing is the most secure part of the house. No one enters without my fingerprint. No one. He took a step closer. Jaiwan was trapped between the wall and the wall of muscle that was Kang Taehyun. There are rules, Jaiwan, Taehyun murmured. The intensity in his eyes was hypnotic. Rule number 1, you do not leave the estate without my permission. Rule number 2, you do not speak to anyone outside about what you see here. He paused. His hand twitched as if he wanted to reach out, to touch Jaiwan's arm, but he held back. And rule number 3, Taehyun whispered, his voice dropping to a gravelly rumble. You do not lie to me. Ever. If you're scared, you tell me. If you want something, you tell me. If you try to run. His gaze darkened. I will find you. Jaiwan shivered. It wasn't a threat of violence. It was a promise of inevitability. I understand, Jaiwan whispered. Good. Taehyun's expression softened, just a fraction. He looked at the baby in Jaiwan's arms. He reached out, his large, rough finger brushing Sia's tiny hand. The contrast, the lethal hand of a killer touching the soft skin of a baby, made Jaiwan's heart ache. Go upstairs. Third door on the left. Get settled, Taehyun said, stepping back, the mask of the cold boss sliding back into place. I have work to do. He turned and walked away toward a set of double doors that likely led to his office. Jaiwan watched him go. He felt a strange pull, a desire to call him back, to tell him he shouldn't be alone tonight. But he stayed silent. He walked up the grand staircase, holding Sia tight. The room he was given was luxurious. A king-sized bed, a crib made of mahogany, a view of the moonlit garden. But what drew Jaiwan's attention was the door on the far wall. It was closed. But he knew, with a certainty that made his skin prickle, that Kang Taehyun was on the other side. Jaiwan laid Sia in the crib. The baby slept peacefully, unaware that he was the heir to an empire of blood. Jaiwan went to the bathroom to wash his face. He looked at himself in the mirror. Tired. What have you done? He asked his reflection. He pulled his shirt up slightly to check the old scar on his ribs, a memory of a past he had run away from. A past that taught him never to trust Alphys. And yet, here he was. In the lion's den. Suddenly, a soft knock came from the connecting door. Jaiwan froze. Jaiwan! Taehyun's voice was muffled through the wood. Why yes. I forgot something. Silence. Thank you, Taehyun said. The vulnerability in his voice was stark, naked. For saving him. Jaiwan stared at the door, his hand pressed against his chest. He could almost feel the heat of the man on the other side. You're welcome, Jaiwan whispered. He heard footsteps retreat. Jaiwan slid down to the floor, back against the door, burying his face in his hands. He was safe from the world outside. But in here? In this house, with that man? He was in more danger than he had ever been in his life. Because for the first time in forever, he didn't want to run. Chapter 3. Morning in the Kang estate didn't break, it shattered. Jaiwan woke up to the sound of a helicopter landing somewhere on the grounds. The windows rattled in their frames. He bolted upright, heart hammering, but Sia was still fast asleep in the mahogany crib, his tiny chest rising and falling in a rhythm that was the only peaceful thing in this house. Jaiwan moved through the morning like a ghost. He changed Sia, heated a bottle in the kitchenette provided in his room, and tried to ignore the fact that his door had no lock on the inside. Only the outside. He ventured out around 8 a.m. The hallway was vast and empty, lined with windows that looked out onto a gray, drizzling sky. But downstairs, the house was alive. And it was terrifying. The kitchen was a sleek, industrial space of stainless steel and black granite. When Jaiwan entered, holding Sia against his chest, conversation died instantly. 3 men sat at the island. They weren't wearing suits today. They were in t-shirts that showed too much, scars that ran down forearms, tattoos of snakes and daggers, the bulge of holsters at their waistbands. They stared at Jaiwan. A rabbit entering a wolf den. Is that the nanny? One of them grunted, taking a bite of toast. He had a shaved head and eyes like a shark. Caretaker, Jaiwan corrected softly, clutching the baby tighter. He moved to the fridge, needing milk for himself. His hands were trembling just a little. Boss said no one talks to him, another man said. He was cleaning a knife with a napkin. Leave him be. Jaiwan poured his milk, feeling their eyes on his back. It felt like ants crawling on his skin. He turned to leave, desperate for the safety of his room, when the double doors swung open. The air in the room changed instantly. The temperature dropped. The men at the counter scrambled to stand up, heads bowing. Kang Taehyun walked in. He wasn't the grieving father from the hospital. He wasn't the tired man in the car. This was the underboss. He wore a 3-piece suit, tailored to perfection, but his tie was loose. His hair was slicked back. He radiated power so intense it made the air taste metallic. He walked straight to the coffee machine, ignoring his men. Ignoring Jaiwan. Report, Taehyun said. His voice was cold, sharp steel. We found the leak, sir, the man with the knife said. It was the accountant in Incheon. He talked to the southern clan. Taehyun poured his coffee. But no sugar. He took a sip, then set the mug down with a clink that sounded like a gunshot in the silent room. Handle it, Taehyun said. Make sure everyone knows what happens when they sell my family's secrets. Yes, sir. The men filed out, leaving a heavy silence behind. Only then did Taehyun turn. He looked at Jaewon. The coldness in his eyes didn't vanish, but it cracked. He looked at the baby in Jaewon's arms, then up at Jaewon's face. He scanned him, checking for damage. Did you sleep? Taehyun asked. A little, Jaewon lied. Taehyun walked over. He moved into Jaewon's personal space, disregarding boundaries. He stopped inches away. Jaewon could smell the coffee on his breath, mixed with that dark, woody scent of his pheromones. It made Jaewon's knees weak, a biological reaction he hated but couldn't stop. You're lying, Taehyun murmured. He reached out, his thumb brushing the dark circle under Jaewon's eye. The touch was electric. You were listening to the guards patrol. You don't trust the walls yet. Jaewon forgot to breathe. The man who just ordered a hit was now touching his face with agonizing gentleness. It's a big house, Jaewon whispered. It's loud. It's safe, Taehyun insisted. His eyes dropped to Jaewon's lips. For a second, just a heartbeat, the air crackled. The tension was thick, heavy, pulling them together like magnets. Then, Seoha made a small noise, a happy gurgle. The spell broke. Taehyun pulled his hand back, his face closing off. I have meetings all day, Taehyun said, his voice flat again. Stay in the East Wing. Do not go near the library. Why? Because I said so. He turned and left without looking back. Jaewon intended to listen. He really did. But by 2 p.m., the isolation was eating him alive. Seoha was napping. The silence in the East Wing was deafening. Jaewon needed a book. He needed a distraction from his own thoughts, from the memories of the hospital, from the way Taehyun's thumb had felt on his skin. He remembered seeing a library door on the first floor. Just one book, he thought. I'll be quick. He crept downstairs. The house was quiet. Too quiet. He found the heavy oak doors of the library. They were slightly ajar. As he reached for the handle, he heard it. A sound that froze the blood in his veins. A muffled, wet thud. Like meat hitting a butcher's block. Then a voice. Pleading. Please, Director Kong. I didn't know. I swear. Jaewon paralyzed. He should run. He should run back to the room and lock the door. But his feet were rooted. You didn't know? Taehyun's voice. It wasn't loud. It was terrifyingly calm. You gave them the route. My wife was in that car. My son was in that car. I needed the money, my debts. Money? Taehyun laughed. It was a dark, dry sound. You traded my life for money. Another thud. Louder this time. A scream cut short. Jaewon gasped, his hand flying to his mouth. He took a step back, the floorboard creaking under his foot. Silence inside the room. Who's there? Taehyun barked. Jaewon turned to run, but the doors were flung open. Taehyun stood there. He had removed his jacket. His white shirt was rolled up to the elbows. And his hands? His knuckles were split. There was blood on them. Not his blood. He looked wild. His chest was heaving, his eyes blown wide with adrenaline and rage. The monster was out of the cage. Jaewon stood frozen, shaking. He saw past Taehyun into the room. A man was on the floor, curled in a ball, 2 guards dragging him away. Taehyun stepped out, closing the door behind him, blocking the view. He looked at Jaewon. He saw the fear in the Omega's eyes. He saw the way Jaewon flinched away from him. I told you, Taehyun growled, stepping forward, not to come here. I just wanted a book, Jaewon stammered, backing away until his back hit the hallway wall. Taehyun stalked him. He looked dangerous. Unhinged. He cornered Jaewon, slamming his hands against the wall on either side of Jaewon's head, trapping him. You shouldn't see this, Taehyun hissed. He was breathing hard, the scent of violence rolling off him in waves. You're supposed to see the suit. The money. Not the butcher. I see you, Jaewon whispered. He was terrified. But he also saw the tremor in Taehyun's arms. The alpha wasn't just angry. He was in pain. He was reliving the accident that took his wife. Taehyun looked down at his bloody hands, then at Jaewon's clean white shirt. He pulled his hands away as if burned. Go. Go upstairs. You're hurting, Jaewon said. He didn't know why he said it. It was stupid. It was suicidal. Taehyun froze. What? Your hand, Jaewon said. He reached out. Taehyun flinched, but he didn't pull away. Jaewon's cool fingers touched the bruised, bloody knuckles of the mafia boss. You need to clean this, Jaewon murmured. He looked up, meeting Taehyun's chaotic eyes. Before you hold Siaha. He can't smell the blood. It scares him. Taehyun stared at him. He looked completely lost. The rage was draining out of him, replaced by a desperate, hungry exhaustion. Why aren't you running? Taehyun whispered. Everyone runs. I'm not everyone, Jaewon replied. Taehyun let out a shuddering breath. He leaned forward, resting his forehead against Jaewon's shoulder. He was heavy. He surrendered his weight. Make it stop, Taehyun mumbled into Jaewon's shirt. The noise inside my head. Make it stop. Jaewon stood there in the hallway, the most dangerous man in Seoul collapsing against him. Slowly, tentatively, Jaewon raised his hand and rested it on the back of Taehyun's neck, his fingers tangling in the dark hair. It's okay, Jaewon whispered, his heart pounding against Taehyun's chest. I've got you. For a moment, in the lion's den, the lion was just a man. And he was drowning. Chapter 4. The bathroom attached to the master suite was larger than Jaewon's entire old apartment. It was all black marble and gold fixtures, cold surfaces that magnified the silence. Jaewon sat on the edge of the massive bathtub. Taehyun sat on a velvet stool opposite him, his knees knocked apart, his expensive dress shirt discarded on the floor. He was wearing a white undershirt that clung to his chest, damp with sweat. This will sting, Jaewon murmured. He dipped a cotton pad into the antiseptic. He didn't look at Taehyun's face. He focused on the hands. They were large hands. Deadly hands. The knuckles on the right hand were split open, raw, and angry red against the olive skin. Dried blood crusted the cuticles. Jaewon pressed the cotton to the wound. Taehyun hissed, a sharp intake of breath through his teeth. His hand jerked back instinctively, muscle memory from a life of fighting. Stay still, Jaewon ordered softly. He didn't let go. His grip on Taehyun's wrist was firm, grounding. Taehyun froze. He looked at Jaewon, surprised by the tone. No one ordered Kong Taehyun. But he didn't pull away. He watched as Jaewon worked, cleaning the violence off his skin with agonizing care. You have soft hands, Taehyun said. His voice was rough, like gravel tumbling down a hill. Too soft for this place. My hands are fine, Jaewon replied, tossing the dirty cotton into the bin and reaching for the bandages. They've seen blood before. Usually in a hospital. I killed a man today, Taehyun said. He didn't dress it up. He threw the words down like a gauntlet, daring Jaewon to pick it up. Not literally. But I signed the order. He won't see the sunrise. Jaewon paused. The bandage hovered over the skin. The air in the bathroom grew heavy, the scent of burnt wood spiking with a bitter note of self-loathing. He sold you out, Jaewon said quietly. He resumed wrapping the hand. Over and under. Tight but not too tight. He put Siaha in danger. Does that make it right? Jaewon finished the knot. He finally looked up. His hazel eyes met Taehyun's dark abyss. In your world? Yes. Jaewon's voice didn't shake. I don't have to like your world, Mr. Kong. But I understand protecting a child. I would do bad things to keep him safe too. Taehyun stared at him. He looked like he was trying to solve a complex equation. He reached out with his uninjured hand. He didn't touch Jaewon's face. He touched his waist. His large hand settled on the side of Jaewon's ribcage, just above the hip. It was a possessive, heavy weight. The heat from his palms seeped through Jaewon's thin shirt, branding him. But then Taehyun felt it. Under the fabric, under the skin, there was a ridge. Uneven. Jaewon flinched violently. He pulled back, gasping, his arm crossing over his chest to protect the spot. The connection broke. Taehyun frowned. His eyes narrowed, instantly shifting from vulnerable to predatory. What was that? Nothing, Jaewon said quickly, standing up. I should check on Siaha. Sit down, Taehyun commanded. It wasn't a request. Jaewon froze. Lift your shirt, Taehyun said. Mr. Kong, please. Jaewon. Taehyun stood up. He towered over the nurse. The height difference was overwhelming. I need to know what hurts you. Lift it. Jaiwin's hands trembled. Slowly, agonizingly, he gripped the hem of his white t-shirt. He pulled it up, exposing his pale stomach, his ribs, and the scar. It was ugly. A jagged, silver line that wrapped around his left side, looking like the skin had been twisted and burned. It was an old injury, healed badly. Taehyun sucked in a breath. The air in the room dropped 10 degrees. He reached out. This time, Jaiwin didn't flinch. He stood paralyzed as Taehyun's fingers traced the jagged line. The touch was feather-light, a ghost of a caress on the ruined skin. Who? Taehyun asked. One word. A death sentence. An alpha, Jaiwin whispered, staring at the marble floor. My ex. He didn't like that I couldn't get pregnant. He said I was broken. He wanted to fix me. Taehyun's hand stopped moving. His jaw clenched so hard a muscle feathered in his cheek. The rage that rolled off him wasn't the hot, chaotic fire from the library. This was cold. Absolute zero. Is he alive? Taehyun asked. I don't know, Jaiwin admitted. I ran. I changed my name. I've been running for 3 years. Taehyun stepped closer. He was so close that his chest brushed against Jaiwin's. He lowered his head, his lips hovering inches from Jaiwin's ear. Stop running, Taehyun murmured. The vibration went straight to Jaiwin's spine. Taehyun. He will never touch you again, Taehyun swore. It sounded like a prayer and a curse. If he is alive, I will find him. And I will make him wish he had died that night instead of touching you. Jaiwin looked up. Taehyun's face was inches away. The intensity was suffocating. Jaiwin's heart hammered a frantic rhythm against his ribs. Thump thump, thump thump. He should be scared. He should be terrified of this violent man who promised murder so easily. But he wasn't. For the first time in 3 years, the cold spot in his chest felt warm. Why? Jaiwin breathed. Why do you care? I'm just the help. Taehyun's eyes dropped to Jaiwin's lips. His pupils were blown wide, swallowing the iris. The sexual tension snapped into place, tight as a bowstring. You're not the help, Taehyun whispered. You're the only person who looked at my bloody hands and didn't see a monster. He leaned in. Jaiwin's breath hitched. He tilted his head back, his eyes fluttering shut, waiting. Wanting. The space between them was charged with electricity. He could feel the heat radiating from Taehyun's skin, could smell the cedar and smoke and want. What? The cry from the other room cut through the air like a knife. Sia. They sprang apart as if burned. Taehyun cleared his throat, turning away, running a hand through his hair. His ears were red. Go, Taehyun said, his voice strained. He needs you. Jaiwin nodded, fumbling with his shirt, pulling it down to cover the scar. Yes, I... He fled the bathroom. He ran into the nursery, scooping up the crying baby. He rocked Sia, shushing him, his own heart still racing at a dangerous speed. He walked to the window, looking out at the dark grounds of the estate. He was safe here. Taehyun had promised. But as he looked down at the gate, he saw a car parked just outside the perimeter. A sedan. It sat there for a moment, headlights off, then drove away slowly. Jaiwin felt a cold shiver that had nothing to do with the night air. The walls were high. The guards were armed. But the past had a way of climbing over walls. And inside the house, a different kind of danger was brewing. One that felt like warm hands on a scar, and a promise that sounded a lot like love. Chapter 5. The world outside the estate was loud. Too loud. Jaiwin sat in the back of the armored convoy, Sia strapped securely into the car seat beside him. 3 black SUVs. 12 guards. All for a routine pediatric checkup. You're breathing too fast, Taehyun said without looking up from his phone. He was sitting opposite them again, his presence filling the cabin. I haven't left the gates in 3 weeks, Jaiwin murmured, rubbing his damp palms on his jeans. It feels exposed. The clinic is owned by us, Taehyun said, finally locking eyes with him. His gaze was heavy, grounding. The entire floor is cleared. No one gets in unless I say so. You are safer there than you are in the president's office. Jaiwin nodded, but the itch between his shoulder blades didn't stop. The feeling of being watched. The convoy pulled up to the private rear entrance of the Gangnam Medical Center. It was surgical precision. Guards exited first, forming a wall. Taehyun stepped out, buttoning his jacket, scanning the perimeter with eyes that missed nothing. He beckoned Jaiwan. Jaiwan stepped out, clutching the diaper bag, while a guard carried the car seat. They moved fast. Inside, the clinic was gleaming white and silent. The doctor, an older beta named Dr. Lim, was shaking slightly as he bowed. Director Kong. The vaccines are ready. The appointment was quick. Sia cried when the needle went in, a high, piercing sound that made Taehyun flinch visibly. The mafia boss looked ready to shoot the syringe, but he held his ground, letting Jaiwan soothe the baby with soft coos and a warm hand on his chest. He's strong, Dr. Lim said, wiping sweat from his forehead. Just like his father. We're leaving, Taehyun announced abruptly. He didn't like the open space. His instincts were flaring. They moved back to the elevator. The doors slid open. But the lobby wasn't empty. Standing by the exit, blocking the path to the armored cars, were 5 men. They weren't Taehyun's men. They wore burgundy suits. In the center stood a man with a jagged scar running through his eyebrow. Choi Min-ho, the Viper of the Southern Clan. Taehyun stopped. His hand went to the small of Jaiwan's back, pushing him behind his own body. A human shield. Director Kong, Choi smiled. It was a reptile smile. Taking the cub for a walk? You're a long way from Incheon, Choi, Taehyun said. His voice was casual, bored even. But Jaiwan could feel the tension radiating off him, heat pouring out like a furnace door opening. Did you get lost? Just wanted to pay my respects, Choi said, taking a step forward. Taehyun's guards raised their weapons instantly. Click-clack. A symphony of mechanical death. Choi didn't flinch. His eyes slid past Taehyun. They landed on Jaiwan. Jaiwan froze. He felt that gaze like slime on his skin. And this must be the new pet, Choi drawled. He licked his lips. Pretty. A bit used though, isn't he? Taehyun's posture didn't change, but the air around him curdled. Careful. Oh, come on, Taehyun. We do our research, Choi laughed softly. Han Jaiwan, formerly known as Park Jaiwan, ran away from a husband in Daegu 3 years ago. Broken ribs. Damaged womb. Defective goods. Jaiwan stopped breathing. The hallway spun. They know. They know everything. I heard his ex-husband is still looking for him, Choi continued, his voice dropping to a mock whisper. Imagine if someone gave him a call. Told him where his runaway bride is hiding. Silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. Jaiwan gripped Taehyun's jacket from behind, his knuckles white. He was trembling so hard he thought he might shatter. Taehyun didn't look at Jaiwan. He stared at Choi. And then he smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a shark scenting blood in the water. You think you have leverage, Taehyun said softly. He took a step forward, leaving the protection of his guards. I think I have a bargaining chip, Choi sneered. No, Taehyun said. You have a death wish. In one fluid motion, Taehyun moved. It was too fast to follow. One moment he was standing there, the next he had crossed the 10 feet between them. Choi reached for his gun, but he was too slow. Taehyun didn't use a weapon. He grabbed Choi by the throat and slammed him backward into the reinforced glass of the reception desk. The glass spiderwebbed with a sickening crack. Choi gasped, clawing at Taehyun's hand. Taehyun leaned in close. His voice was a low growl, audible only to them and the terrified Jaiwan. You mention his name again, Taehyun whispered, and I will cut your tongue out. Can't start a war. Choi choked out, his face turning purple. You threaten my family, Taehyun roared. The sound echoed off the walls, a primal alpha command that made every person in the room flinch. The war is already started. Taehyun drew his own gun. He didn't shoot Choi in the head. He lowered the barrel and fired a single shot into Choi's knee. Bang! Choi screamed, collapsing to the floor as Taehyun released him. Get him out of here, Taehyun ordered Choi's men, who were frozen in shock, guns wavering. Tell your boss that the South is now a prohibited zone. If I see any of you in Seoul again, there won't be warnings. There will be body bags. He turned his back on them. A supreme act of disrespect. An act of ultimate confidence. He walked back to Jaiwan. Jaiwan was pressing himself against the wall, eyes wide, shielding Sia's ears. He looked terrified. Taehyun's face softened instantly. The monster vanished, leaving the protector. Did he scare you? Taehyun asked, his voice breathless but gentle. You shot him, Jaiwon whispered. He knew your name, Taehyun said. He reached out, his hand hovering over Jaiwon's cheek. He checked for permission. When Jaiwon didn't pull away, he cupped his face. His thumb brushed over Jaiwon's trembling lip. He tried to use your pain against you. I don't allow that. He knows where I am, Jaiwon choked out, a tear escaping. He'll tell my ex. He'll come for me. Let him come, Taehyun said fiercely. He leaned his forehead against Jaiwon's. Let them all come. I will burn the whole city before I let anyone touch you again. The promise hung in the air, heavy and absolute. Taehyun scooped up the baby carrier in one hand and wrapped his other arm firmly around Jaiwon's waist. Walk with me, Taehyun commanded. Head up. You are with me now. Jaiwon took a breath. He smelled the gunpowder on Taehyun's suit. He smelled the iron of fresh blood. But under it all, he smelled the cedar. The safety. He straightened his spine. He let the mafia boss lead him out of the clinic, stepping over the groaning man on the floor without looking down. The war had started. And for the first time, Jaiwon wasn't fighting it alone. Chapter 6. The suitcase was small. Just a duffel bag, really. Jaiwon's hands were shaking so bad he couldn't get the zipper to catch. He cursed under his breath, a broken, wet sound. The room was dark, lit only by the flash of lightning from the storm raging outside. It matched the storm inside his head. Choi knows. He knows. The thought looped in his brain like a siren. The Viper knew his name, which meant his ex-husband, the man who gave him the scar on his ribs, the man who haunted his nightmares, was only a phone call away. Jaiwon looked at the crib. Siha was asleep, oblivious. I can't let them hurt you, Jaiwon whispered to the sleeping child. If I stay, they'll come for me. And they'll burn this house down to get to me. He had to leave. It was the only way to protect them. He would run, draw the fire away from the estate, away from Taehyun. He finally yanked the zipper shut. He slung the bag over his shoulder. He turned to the door. And stopped dead. Kang Taehyun was leaning against the doorframe. He wasn't wearing his suit jacket. His white shirt was unbuttoned at the top, his sleeves rolled up. He looked exhausted. He looked dangerous. Going somewhere? Taehyun asked. His voice was terrifyingly soft. I can't stay here, Jaiwon stammered, gripping the strap of his bag until his knuckles turned white. You saw what happened today. They know who I am. I know, Taehyun said. He didn't move. He blocked the only exit. You don't understand. Jaiwon's voice cracked, rising in pitch. My ex, he's not just an abusive alpha. He has connections. If he finds out I'm here, he'll bring a war to your doorstep. I won't let Siha get hurt because of me. So you're leaving? Taehyun pushed off the doorframe. He took a slow step into the room. You're going to walk out into the rain with no money, no protection, and let them hunt you down? It's better than them hurting you. Jaiwon shouted, tears finally spilling over hot and fast. I'm just the nanny, Taehyun. I'm disposable. You're the underboss. You have an empire. You can't risk it for someone like me. Taehyun stopped. He was close now. The scent of ozone and burnt wood was overwhelming, thick with pheromones that smelled like distress and fury. Disposable. Taehyun repeated the word like it tasted like poison. Suddenly, the estate alarms blared. WOW. Red emergency lights flashed in the hallway. Jaiwon gasped. They're here. Yes, Taehyun said calmly. He didn't look at the window. He looked at Jaiwon. Choi doesn't wait. He sent a hit squad. They're at the gate. Let me go. Jaiwon panicked, trying to push past him. If I go out there, they'll take me and leave you alone. Let me. Taehyun grabbed him. He didn't grab the bag. He grabbed Jaiwon. One arm hooked around Jaiwon's waist, hauling him flush against his hard body. The duffel bag dropped to the floor with a thud. Listen to me, Taehyun snarled, shaking him once, hard. You think I care about the gate? You think I care about the empire? You should. Jaiwon sobbed, his hands pressing against Taehyun's chest, feeling the frantic, sledgehammer beat of the alpha's heart. I'm nothing. I'm broken. You are everything. Taehyun roared. The silence that followed was louder than the sirens. Taehyun was breathing heavily, his dark eyes searching Jaiwon's face, stripping him bare. I have spent my whole life building walls, Taehyun rasped, his voice dropping to a desperate whisper. I built a throne of blood and money. And it was cold, Jaiwon. It was so cold. He brought his hand up, cupping the back of Jaiwon's neck, his fingers tangling in the hair, holding him in place. Then you walked into that hospital room. And you made my son stop crying. And you touched my bloody hands and didn't flinch. Taehyun. If you walk out that door, Taehyun said, leaning down, his forehead pressing against Jaiwon's, I will burn this city to the ground. I will tear apart every street, every building, every person until I find you in the ash. Do you understand me? You'll die, Jaiwon whispered, trembling. Then I die, Taehyun vowed. But I will not live in a world where you are running in the cold while I sit in a warm house. The sirens wailed outside. Gunfire popped in the distance, the guards engaging the intruders. But in the nursery, the world had shrunk to 2 men. Jaiwon looked into the abyss of Taehyun's eyes and saw no hesitation. He saw a man who would burn the world to keep him warm. The fight went out of Jaiwon's legs. He sagged against Taehyun. I'm scared, Jaiwon admitted, his voice barely a breath. I know, Taehyun murmured. His hand slid down to Jaiwon's waist, pulling him impossibly closer. The heat between them was searing. Let me be the shield. Stop trying to be the sacrifice. Jaiwon looked up at his lips. He couldn't help it. The pull was magnetic. Undeniable. Make them stop, Jaiwon pleaded. He didn't know if he meant the gunman outside or the terrified beating of his own heart. I will, Taehyun promised. And then he kissed him. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was a collision. A claiming. Taehyun's mouth captured Jaiwon's with a hunger that had been starving for weeks. It was rough, desperate, tasting of coffee and fear and overwhelming need. Jaiwon whimpered into the kiss, his hands clutching Taehyun's shirt, pulling him closer. He felt Taehyun's growl vibrate against his lips, a possessive, primal sound that made Jaiwon's toes curl. The kiss deepened, tongues meeting, breaths mingling. It felt like falling off a cliff and being caught at the last second. For a moment, the war outside didn't exist. There was only the friction of stubble against soft skin, the crushing weight of the alpha's arms, and the realization that Jaiwon had finally found a place where he didn't have to run. Taehyun pulled back, just an inch, his eyes blown wide and black with lust. He was panting. Get in the safe room, Taehyun ordered, his voice wrecked, deep and rough. Take Sia. Lock the door. Do not open it for anyone but me. Where are you going? Jaiwon grabbed his wrist. Taehyun kissed his forehead. A benediction. To finish this, Taehyun said. He pulled a gun from the holster at his back. The cold steel glinted in the red emergency light. They touched my gate. Now they pay. He turned and strode out of the room, a king going to war. Jaiwon stood there for a heartbeat, his lips still burning from the kiss. He looked at the duffel bag on the floor. He kicked it aside. He wasn't running anymore. He grabbed Sia from the crib and ran toward the hidden panel in the wall. Welcome to the end of the line. The sirens have stopped. The screaming has faded. Now there is only the silence that comes after the war. If you made it this far, you're part of the family now. If you're ready to see who's left standing when the smoke clears, hit that like button one last time. Chapter 7. The safe room was a box of steel and filtered air. Jaiwon sat on the floor, his back pressed against the cold metal wall, knees pulled to his chest. Sia was asleep in his arms, miraculously heavy and warm, a stark contrast to the ice in Jaiwon's veins. Time didn't move in here. It had been 10 minutes? An hour? Outside, the muffled pops of gunfire had stopped ages ago. Now there was nothing. Just the hum of the ventilation system. He's dead, the treacherous voice in Jaiwon's head whispered. He burned the world, and he burned with it. Jaiwon squeezed his eyes shut. No. He promised. Then came the sound. Clang. Someone was working the heavy locking mechanism from the outside. The wheel spun with a metallic groan. Jaiwon scrambled back, shifting Sia to his left arm, his right hand searching for a weapon. He grabbed a heavy flashlight from the emergency shelf. He held it up, shaking. If it was Choi, if it was the ex-husband, Jaiwon wouldn't go quietly. Not this time. The heavy steel door hissed as the seal broke. It swung open slowly. Jaiwon raised the flashlight, breath hitched in his throat. A figure stood in the doorway. Silhouette against the dim hallway light. The man was leaning heavily against the doorframe. His pristine white shirt was ruined, stained dark and torn at the shoulder. He was breathing hard, chest heaving. He stepped into the light. Kang Taehyun. He looked like he had walked through hell. There was a cut above his eye, bleeding freely. His knuckles were raw. But his eyes, they were clear. They were burning. He saw Jaiwon. He saw the flashlight raised as a weapon. A tired, crooked smile ghosted across Taehyun's lips. "You can put that down," Taehyun rasped. His voice was wrecked, like he'd been shouting orders through smoke. "It's done." Jaiwon dropped the flashlight. It clattered loudly on the floor. "Taehyun." Jaiwon scrambled up, rushing forward. He didn't care about the blood. He didn't care about the sweat. He slammed into Taehyun, burying his face in the man's uninjured shoulder, sobbing with relief. Taehyun hissed in pain but wrapped his arms around Jaiwon and the baby immediately. He held them tight, crushing them against him as if trying to merge their bodies into one. "I told you," Taehyun murmured into Jaiwon's hair, kissing the top of his head frantically. "I told you I'd come back." "You're bleeding," Jaiwon choked out, pulling back to look at the cut on his forehead. "You're hurt." "Not mine," Taehyun said, glancing at the stains on his shirt. "Most of it isn't mine." "Choi." "Gone," Taehyun said. The word was final. "And the others?" "The message has been sent. No one comes to this gate again. Not tonight. Not ever." He reached out, wiping a tear from Jaiwon's cheek with a thumb that was surprisingly clean. "And your ex," Taehyun added softly. Jaiwon froze. "What?" "I made a call," Taehyun said. His eyes were dark, devoid of mercy for the enemy, but full of devotion for Jaiwon. "While the guards were cleaning up. He won't be looking for you anymore. He won't be looking for anyone." Jaiwon stared at him. He should be horrified. He should be repulsed by the violence that solved his problems. But looking at this man, this powerful, terrifying man who had dismantled his nightmares one by one, Jaiwon only felt one thing. "Thank you," Jaiwon whispered. "Don't thank me," Taehyun said, leaning his forehead against Jaiwon's. "I'm a selfish man, Jaiwon. I didn't do it just for you. I did it because I can't sleep if you're not in the room next to me." Siaha stirred between them, letting out a small, demanding squawk. Taehyun laughed. It was a Rayal laugh this time. Exhausted but light. "He agrees," Taehyun said. "He wants to go to bed." "Let's go home," Jaiwon said. "We are home," Taehyun corrected. 3 months later, the morning sun hit the glass walls of the Kang estate, turning the room into a prism of light. The fear was gone. The guards were still there, but they weren't frantic anymore. They stood taller. They knew who they served. In the main office, a room where death sentences used to be signed, the atmosphere had changed. Taehyun sat behind the massive mahogany desk. He was on a call with the Incheon branch, his voice low and commanding. He looked every inch the king of the underworld. But on the plush rug in the corner of the office, surrounded by soft blocks, sat Siaha. He was sitting up now, babbling happily, chewing on a toy giraffe. And sitting in the armchair next to the desk, reading a book, was Jaiwon. He wasn't wearing scrubs. He was wearing a soft cashmere sweater that cost more than his old car. On his finger, a simple, thick band of platinum caught the light. The door opened. A lieutenant walked in, bowing low. "Boss. The meeting with the Western faction is set." "Good," Taehyun said, hanging up the phone. The lieutenant looked at Jaiwon, then bowed to him too. "Sir." Jaiwon smiled, marking the page in his book. "Good morning, Min-soo." It wasn't the bow of a subordinate to a superior. It was the bow to the consort. Everyone knew. You didn't cross Han Jaiwon unless you wanted to deal with the devil himself. Taehyun stood up. He walked around the desk. He didn't go to the lieutenant. He went to the rug. He scooped Siaha up in one arm, then reached out his other hand to Jaiwon. Jaiwon took it, standing up. Taehyun pulled him close, kissing him briefly but deeply, right in front of his men. A public claim. "I have to go," Taehyun murmured against his lips. "Be safe," Jaiwon said, straightening Taehyun's tie. "Come back to us. Always." Taehyun turned to face the door, holding his son in one arm, his husband standing at his right hand. The lieutenant watched them. The ruthless boss. The gentle Omega. There. They cast 3 distinct shadows on the floor. Separately, they were targets. Together, They were a fortress. Taehyun walked out to face the world, but for the first time in his life, he wasn't walking into the darkness alone. He carried the light with him. And that is the story of the nurse and the mafia king. I'm not crying, you are. Thank you for spending time in the BL story room. If this story made your heart race or ache or flutter, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on the notifications. Tell me in the comments, what kind of story should we write next? Enemies to lovers in a high school? Or maybe a supernatural vampire romance? I'll be waiting for you in the next video. Goodbye for now.